everyone, and welcome back to Cancer Q&A.
Today we are going to be talking about microtentacles and dive deeper into what cancer metastasis is. We are excited because this episode will relate to what we learned in the lab over the summer.
So over the summer, we worked in the Martin Laboratory at the University of Maryland Medical Center, and we shadowed two PhD students. Shout out to Megan and Julia for all your hard work, and thanks for answering all of our questions and showing us around the lab. But this lab coined the term microtentacles, which are protrusions from cancer cells, and they can help cancer metastasize and grow in different tissues.
To better understand this definition, let's look at the structure of a cell membrane. The contents of a cell are surrounded by a membrane that can be referred to as a phospholipid bilayer. This is important so all the organelles and things inside of cells don't just splatter around everywhere and they're in a contained area. And you can see the phospholipid bilayer on the diagram here. This name comes from the name of the fat molecule in the membrane, a phospholipid, and the fact that there are two layers of them.
So this is an example of a phospholipid. Now, the phosphate group is where the term phospho comes from, and you can see the chemical formula for phosphate right there, PO4, 3 minus. So this is a negatively charged head right here, and because it's negatively charged, it's hydrophilic and it loves water. So that's why it's facing outwards on the phospholipid membrane. And on the other side, you have a lipid. And lipids are a broad range of organic compounds that include fats, waxes, and steroids. So these are our fatty acid tails, and they are hydrophobic because they have a neutral charge, which means they hate the water, and since this is the inside of the cell and this is the outside of the cell, they face towards each other to make the middle of the membrane.
Yes, so because of the negative charge on the phosphate group, the heads will face out towards the water and other charged molecules in and outside of cells, and the tails will be on the inside facing each other.
The uncharged nature of these fatty acids is why things can go through the cell membrane. Now, nonpolar things go through the cell membrane much more easier than things that are on the outside, or charged ions and things like that, or big molecules. The nonpolar molecules can fit through really easily, and the other charged things cannot because they can only fit up here and they can't get down to the nonpolar area. And so this is why we want to talk about membrane structure, because the proteins that make up microtentacles are coated by the membrane, which is how they protrude off cancer cells without breaking the membrane.
Looking at this diagram, we can see how the proteins in microtentacles protrude out of the cells. Don't worry if you do not fully understand all the details of the cell membrane, but we wanted to include a little bit of background to make these concepts easier to understand. You can see how the microtentacles are reaching out and how they could potentially grab onto something, and how the proteins push out of the cell and the membrane is still surrounding them.
Yeah, so if the membrane is still surrounding it and these microtentacles can reach out, it's really easy to grab onto blood vessels. And that's how tumors can metastasize, and these circulating tumor cells can lead into different tissues. Studying microtentacles has some potentially important clinical uses because they can increase cell attachment to different tissues and allow cancer to spread. If doctors know that microtentacles are present, surgery might be a better option for immediate removal of the tumor or drug that targets destruction of the microtentacles.
Most chemotherapy drugs target cell division, and the goal is to slow or stop tumor growth. Dr. Martin's team found that a common chemotherapy drug called Taxol actually makes microtentacles grow longer so that they can reattach to other tissues faster, causing cancer metastasis to increase. There are also some other molecules found inside cells that can help stabilize microtentacles, like a protein called vimentin. And so these other molecules could also be targets for cancer treatments.
We also have drawn a blood vessel here in attachment with the microtentacle. And as you can see, it's saying, let me in, because it wants to invade this tissue and infest itself so that it can grow and group up with more cancer cells to spread. Thinking about this attachment is important because Microtentacles can not only reach out and attach to blood vessels more easily, they can reach out to each other and group together more easily. Um, an interesting thing is that the flexibility and the length of the tentacles can also carry into how easy the blood vessels able to move, or how able the microtentacles to move through these blood vessels and how quickly it can infest.
Just as a refresher, metastatic tumors are cancerous tumors that form in another part of the body away from the primary tumor. And metastatic cancer is classified as stage 4 cancer. Normally, cells undergo programmed cell death called apoptosis when they're detached from one another, but cancer cells bypass this rule.
Yeah, so because they bypass this apoptosis, they can travel throughout the body, which is how tumors are able to spread and cause tumors in other sites than the primary tumor. For example, cancer cells can break off of this main tumor and travel to nearby tissues, um, through the lymphatic system, which is where your lymph nodes are a part of, or the bloodstream in order to get to different parts of the body. It's important to note that cancer cells will not always metastasize and they won't continue to grow if conditions aren't favorable, but cancer cells can grow very fast and very quickly, even if normal body conditions aren't kept, which is why you have to do something drastic like radiation therapy to truly kill some of these cancer cells off.
Metastatic cancer cells can remain inactive at a distant site for a long time, which is how cancer can reappear years later after the primary tumor was detected. One of the most common places for cancer to metastasize is the lungs, because if cancer cells enter the bloodstream, the first place they will go is the lungs. And all around your lungs, there are very small blood vessels called capillaries, and it's very easy for cancer cells to get stuck in there and grow.
It is important for researchers to find new ways to treat metastatic cancer because it is very virulent and unpredictable. 90% of cancer deaths are actually from metastatic cancer, and roughly 80% of breast cancer cases are invasive, which makes this research at the Martin Lab even more valuable.
The 5 year survival rate for breast cancer depends on the type of tumor, but local tumors where the cancer has not spread have a 99% 5 year survival rate. Regional tumors where the cancer has spread to nearby lymph nodes and tissues have an 86% 5 year survival rate. Finally, distant tumors that have metastasized to distant parts of the body, like the liver or the lungs, only have a 30% 5 year survival rate.
These jarring statistics make it extremely important to bring awareness to how dangerous metastatic cancer can be and how unpredictable it can be and how many humans can catch it. Um, we want to partially do these episodes to talk about things that can help treat metastatic cancer, but it's also important to spread this information out into the community.
Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune into our next episode where we talk about our lab work in detail.